Season 6, Episode 46, number 264, the Decoded Podcast. What's going on today, Chris?
Whole lot of decoding, code switching.
Decoding and code switching.
Yeah.
Reminds me of the time that we came up with the name Decoded. At the time, I thought it was original. And then whenever I go looking for our podcast on YouTube, I run into all kinds of stuff that are attached to the word decoded. I'm like, damn, we should have thought of something better, but or
Well,
not
we're
better,
not.
but less
Well,
popular or something. I don't know.
I think we've sort of spun it to our advantage though, because there's I don't know if anyone recently has. I know hashtags aren't the primary. Uh, like they don't have the same gloss and glimmer that they had like 6-7 years ago. But oh, sorry, early morning. Funny that I slept in today. I woke up at 7:15. I don't know how I did that, but the I think we still have put more content into the decoded space than a lot of other people have put there. So I remember when we first grabbed the hashtag, there was a like a comic book podcast, but it had stopped putting out content in like 2 years before we started. So I thought, okay, that's okay. That's good. We got the space. Um, I still like it. I still like it. I'm okay with it.
Cool. I mean, I'm cool with it too. I just don't like that it's everywhere. I kind of would have liked us to have something that was a little bit more on its own.
Gotcha.
I know, like on Twitter, when we used it, and I still use it. I mean, we flooded it, so it's like you you're gonna run into us if you put in hashtag Decoded Podcast. There's no
Yeah.
way you can't because we flooded it. But the YouTube machine is a different one. YouTube is such a beast now, and I gotta tell you, that we talked about this at the book club for men. This the meme where people post like a flat screen, a big flat screen TV, and nobody knows what it is because nobody watches television anymore.
Hmm.
Um, I'm all over that, man. I can't wait for my next purchase of a big screen TV. But even on my big screen TV, I'll watch YouTube, right? I'll just grab the controller, go to YouTube, search what I want, watch it. It's like I love YouTube. YouTube for me has been. I think I'm gonna say this here on the podcast. If you were to ask me what is the biggest shift that the internet has made happen for people to discover new things and entertain themselves, I would say it's YouTube. Because anybody can now have their own channel, anybody can broadcast their message. And to me, it's just a big deal because when I was a kid growing up, like many of us, the only way you were going to get news was from the television or the radio. But for I wasn't listening to the radio really, the television and certain channels, and they owned the news. If they didn't say it, it it wasn't true. Oh, and newspapers, sorry, newspapers, radio, TV, and then so to me, getting on TV was like if you were on TV, you were the man or the woman, like you were just the star. We don't need that anymore. I don't need to watch the news anymore. I can just go on YouTube and I can find 3 or 4 channels or whatever of people posting stuff around the same topic that they might be talking about on the news. And I like that. And I used to be pro reporter. Now I now it's like whatever. Um the the media, I'm going to sound like a conspiracy dude in a second. I don't mean it to sound that way, but it's going to sound that way just because they were the gatekeepers of the news. They're not anymore. And they've done some nasty, stupid stuff over the years, like where they do a story and then they twist it on people and then everybody's looking around like for example, when I was well, My whole time in education, anytime I was a reporter reached out to me and said that they wanted to talk to me about whatever, they wanted to do a story, can I come to the school and meet with you or whatever? I would always contact my principal, who would contact the media guy at the board office. And then the media guy at the board office we would jump in and kind of take over in that, like, who's the reporter and what do they want? Because he knew of them all, but he also was like, be careful with this person. And I got that once, be careful with this person, because they've been known to come off nice and then create a story that everybody's looking around like, this is not a good story to be sharing. Like, the the narrative you've chosen doesn't make me or that my school district look good. And not that we should look good all the time, but don't come at me like you're all excited and then twist it, because they're the ones that control that. Well, that's gone now. YouTube's here, and you can tell your story any way you want. And so, with the whole COVID thing and the pushback on the media, I kind of sat back and watched. I'm like, well, you guys kind of brought some of this on yourself, because for years, many of you would write stories and twist them, and everybody's like, that's not the truth. And well, it's the truth from this perspective and that perspective. Yeah, but you're just digging a hole. And so when COVID came, people were like, we don't listen to you anymore. I was like, well, you guys kind of built that. You were part of the problem that built that. And now we got a bigger problem where you have people that are like, I'm not paying any attention to you now. I don't like that. I think we should be reasonable with how we consume and what we consume. But at the same time, it's like, you journalists did that to yourself as a group. And now you want us to just focus on you 24/7? Nah. I'll get my news in different places. I'll pick and choose. And I don't need to watch your show anymore because Chris Clough down the street created a channel. He's doing some cool stuff and it's entertaining. So I watch it on YouTube or Vimeo or wherever you post it. I
Mhm.
love that. I friggin' love YouTube. Where's my
Yeah,
rant?
no, it's good. Yeah, yeah, I don't feel the same way. I don't think YouTube's all no biggie. I don't go there often. I really don't. Um, I would say maybe radio is my equivalent, like listening to news that way. I'm also like, I think the bigger shift for me is just asynchronicity. So I don't have to asynchronicity. Um, there's not a lot of news that I need to access or stories I need to access that I need to know it right now. Sorry, there's no specific topics or news often that I think to myself, I need to know this right now. So, if I use your example back in the day, let's say like the 6 o'clock news, um, I or the evening paper or the morning paper, like that was your hit. And depending on what your day looked like, that might be your only hit on the news. So you're carrying around a single lens all day long. For me, it's just the asynchronicity. I'm not nailing that word at all. That's the change for me. So YouTube is just like one tool, but I never really watch shows on YouTube. I never go looking for content on like I don't by default have a space that I think to myself, because I have access to that space, I feel like um I'm having a better experience. I'll say specifically about the news. I'm actually okay in most cases to find out the news a day later, 2 weeks later, a week later. I don't tend I think the way that, I sort of follow or chase news stories has become a lot more passive because of access. Like I can just at some point go anywhere on any of my feeds and I'm going to catch a whiff of some, like right now a big news story right now is the release of the radioactive water in Japan. and they're going to release the water into the ocean, saying that you remember the I think because of the water that was from the reactors, and remember the reactors broke down because of the was it the typhoon or the tropical storms? It damaged all the coastline and the nuclear reactors. Remember that story from a few years back? So now they're talking about releasing the treated water, and the water's been, worked on, and there's still, I think, a radioactive element in it. And so the discussion right now is all up in, well, what do we understand about the impact of this specific radioactive element being released into the water? That keeps popping up on all my feeds. Now I get it in the background. I'm being fed because I've looked at that, right? There are certain trending things that you show some interest in it, and it's going to keep popping up on a lot of your feeds because they're networked in the background. It's like broken telephone. But yeah, YouTube, I don't look at YouTube as any different as any other platform that just allows you to post up your own personal content for public consumption. Is it a beast? Yeah. Is it the one? Yeah. Will it permanently be the one? No, it won't. Something will collapse it. Something will collapse it. I think it's impossible. I think it's impossible, but something will collapse it. In the same way people thought newspapers were forever, right? Like, so something will happen to create a divergence. There'll be a few adopters, there'll be early adopters, there'll be returners, and then YouTube, to a degree. And you're right, there's like I don't entirely I don't, as a creative space, I don't think YouTube can offer enough creative tools to keep creatives constantly using it. Because I think inherently in being a creative, even if you're a YouTuber, is that you're buying other texts and other tools in order to create your videos. So, you know, it's like it's like we talked about the code switching before. It's like when parents or teachers try to use cool language around the kids, and the kids are like, stop, stop, like old timey person, stop using these words that you're trying to, like, you know, use our culture against us or use our culture with us. I think spaces like YouTube ultimately can't satisfy creatives because it's like the platform itself can't dictate to the creative that it's cool. The creatives have to decide that, and creatives, I like to believe creatives are fickle to a degree. They will choose the tools that help them express themselves, and I just think YouTube as a digital behemoth can't fulfill that. They can't put enough stuff in there to make someone that's creating feel niche enough, seen enough, and individualized enough. So I think I kind of come at it from that perspective, as in it's just a place for me to drop my videos. Am I aware that there's other creative tools in there? Sure, but I'm not going to pay YouTube prices when I can use other tools that are for free, and I can still sort of create well. That was long. That was long. But I don't have the same love for YouTube. I really don't. I could take it or leave it.
That's cool. I enjoy it still. It's my go-to. For me, there's something romantic about the way it resembles watching television, but that it's kind of taken over for me. I really like it. And I like that there's a million channels and a million creatives, and some are good and some are not. And
Mm.
like last night I was watching this like one channel, I can't remember. It's called it's an eating channel, but it focuses on chefs in kind of unique situations that have earned themselves a Michelin star or two. And it's
Okay.
really cool because they take this dude, I'll give you an example. This one guy, he has it's an Asian cuisine. I'm trying to remember which one. He's got this place, this little hole in the wall in a strip mall, and he's got like two Michelin stars. So the the things that they make in there and how they make them and his philosophy is like he's just this cool dude who's like, this is my space. We're in a strip mall. People look past us, but if you sit here and eat, we will blow your mind. right? It's
Mhm.
like, and so it's like a 15-minute thing about him and what they create and how they create. And I'm like, feed me, give me more. I like this story. Just stuff like that. Yeah, for me, YouTube, YouTube just seems to be the people's channel.
Mm.
And anybody can go there and do what they want there. And for me, when I was a kid growing up, that was not like, I could never imagine that. It was this is the television, here are your channels. CBC does this, they own this. They hire people to do this. And now it's like, well, look at what you and I are doing.
Mhm.
Literally, we are creating content. Some we've got some really awesome followers who join us
Mhm.
weekly and who watch the replays, and then they interact with us about our topic or whatever. That's friggin' cool. In the olden days, if I'd have to go to a TV station, their public channel, and try to sell my show to somebody. Hey, I'd like to do a show about this. Okay, well, and then the commitment, right? Go to a studio, do this, do that. This is awesome. We got a camera, we got an internet feed. Here we are.
Yeah, it's what I like about what you mentioned though is that I we've also been in different places according to what our creative needs were. So it just so happens that yours and my creative needs right now, we looked for how do we the pivot here, we would not be using YouTube. We would not be using YouTube unless we if we had not landed on this idea of being live. That's what brought us to YouTube. Like back in the day, let's do this live. And we couldn't figure out another way to sort of put on the live element of this. I guess if we had looked into it, we could have figured out how to do this on Facebook, maybe, right? But we landed on the common tongue, YouTube. So it's not like so to that end is we use as creatives, we use the tool that was convenient for us. Will we stay here? I don't know. I don't know. Because I'm using it, I don't have any deeper affinity to it. I feel like there's something actually really cheeky about, at some one of the seasons, one of us says, "Hey, you want to try doing Decoded this way?" And then we'll just say, and then kind of go there, right? We treat our platform of presentation in the same way that we treat how you and I communicate on the regular. We could be doing Marco Polo, we could be texting, we could be dropping something into WhatsApp, we could be leaving a message on Instagram, right? So that it derails this siloing effect of how creatives communicate and how creatives share their content. And we're sort of distributing our distribution method models our belief system about using multi-platform that's convenient to us at the time. So yeah, I think YouTube has become a behemoth, I think, because creatives are not entirely comfortable with that idea. They want to have an easily findable archive, probably connected with commodifying, probably connecting it with monetizing it. And the last thing you want to do is confuse the customer too much, or the audience or the reader. You don't want to confuse them too much and make them chase your content, because ultimately you need their eyeballs, you need their time, you need their money in order to support your creative endeavors. We need none of that. we because we're using free tools, and as you sort of put it, the Decoded podcast is it's we do it the way we want to do it, right? We just and if people choose to hang out with us, come in for the conversation, kind of listen in, I love being the individual that says, "Oh yeah, by the way, you don't have to stay for the whole Decoded podcast to have these conversations. Here's where you can find me on Insta, and I'm happy to talk to you about it there too. Some people, here's my mobile. Go ahead, text me. I'll talk to you about some of this shit." So there's a weird kind of fourth wall breakdown with this, but there's, I think, a good reminder, let's say in the least to educators, if we're still talking to them, or to other creatives, is that you don't have to be bound. You don't have to be the creativity. the creativity, watch out for the trap of thinking that your creativity is bound to specific tools. I think there's a solid warning in there. Like, just be cautious of that because you could be, you know, keeping yourself from learning something, keeping yourself from really potentially growing in some way. And also keeping yourself from connecting with audiences that are just waiting for someone like you to drop into their creative space. Like, I would love to see what our podcast would look like if we could figure out a way to do Instagram live. Because I think you can do split screen on that. Like, I think you can invite, I think you can. I don't know what that would look like. I don't know if see and then the funny thing is that my brain automatically goes to, which this is probably, it's not wrong. I think it's good that I just noticed this, that my brain did this. So I say to you, let's try using Instagram live. And then my brain goes, oh, I wonder how you rip the video out of that so that we can post it back here on YouTube again. So it's like coming back to that safety of what we've established, back to that original tool. Whereas think I don't think we would have to go that route. Like, we weren't, well, maybe we were. Did we, were we sure? Yeah, we knew we could rip the audio and still have this as a classic podcast when we started, right? We were aware that we could do that, I think. That we knew how to rip the audio out in order to post it up. Yeah, that is true. So I won't claim that part.
We definitely did a little bit of research to
Yeah,
figure out
yeah.
if it would meet our needs, yeah. Which I'm now in the middle of trying to figure out, how do we modify Decoded Podcast to make it more mainstream, as I don't like the current process for it anymore. I've and I've not found any good answers, which upsets me because I was hoping that there were some easy answers out there, but there aren't. There aren't. So I don't know. But I mean, the bottom line is we're doing our thing. People can still find it. People can
Hmm.
watch these videos or press play, put your device down and still listen to us. They don't have to
Hmm.
watch it. They can listen. But a purely audio format, right now, I've dropped the ball on that. I've dropped the ball. But I don't have anybody knocking down our walls or doors saying, when are you going to post up your next audio? So it's like,
Hmm.
okay, there's doesn't seem to be a need for it, but it's still there as an option. I've been thinking lately more about what we're leaving for our kids
Love
to
that.
encounter later on, perhaps when we're gone, or just they become curious. Um, I think that's really cool that there's just this library of you and I talking on Saturday mornings about all kinds of different things. I was thinking more about this because I was reflecting about my father.
Hmm.
I was in one of the rooms in my house where there's a picture of my dad, and I don't have very many pictures of my dad, so I just looked at it. I'm like, damn, I wish there were more artifacts, but there aren't. So that is just the way it is. But here we've got we've got a ton. We've got 264 right now pieces of you and I chatting. Sometimes we're directly talking about our kids or to our kids. I would say
Hmm.
most of it we're not, but they can get a feel for our perspectives at the time and what we were talking about and how we were talking about it. And I think that's really rich for them to get that.
Hmm.
So, I mean, every time I think of that, I think, okay, nothing else matters really. Um,
I like that as purpose.
it's a
I
great purpose.
I
I
really
think
like,
we
dude,
don't.
I really like that as a grounding purpose for this podcast. And I think in the first couple seasons, we used the words to kind of, like, we said stuff like that. I think because we said stuff like we wanted to be able to talk as dads, And like as dudes and like talk as teachers, as husbands, we wanted to be able to kind of like dig into it from that perspective. And I think we have always been successfully delivering that. I think that layer in the pod. But I will say to you and to anyone else who's listening, it's only been recently that I've started to feel some of those roots finally taking a hold, and that I get feels off the idea that my kids, and the confidence that my kids will find these Easter eggs somewhere down the road, or someone that my kids know will talk about this and sort of find some connections, and they're gonna be able to go Easter egging on it. They're gonna be able to go Easter egging on it. And I really do like, and it's not like I'm saving all my good stuff for the pod, right? Like somehow they're like, oh my gosh, daddy loved us. No, I'm not like I'm not saving it for here. Um, but I like this idea of having this content that is very much aligned with me as a human being, and talking about things that are of interest to me, and topics that have popped up um in conversation with my kids and my spouse. But just because of the complexity of life, I don't have the apportioned time to just sit down and really drive deep into it with someone else that's willing to drive deep into it, right? So there's a collegiality to it, there's a friendship to it, there's a time and place, there's the context, there's the tools that just allow for us to kind of like pull this stuff apart. And I would say I've been watering that plant now for sort of 6 years on our pod. And I'm just now starting to see the fruit popping up on it and saying, yeah, you know what? We've really created something kind of cool and special here, that when my kids, for whatever reason, re-engage with it, like I think their minds are going to be blown. They're going to be, they're going to be like, what? This is like, because they're aware, they know, and they know what a podcast is. But this long form conversation, it's a lot of content. Like even if we say conservatively 264 hours, conservatively 264 hours, 10 days straight, if they decided to listen to everything end to end to end to end. No, that's not right. 264. Yeah, 264 hours. No, that would be 20, 100 days. I'm not even doing that right. 100 days straight, they would have to listen, over 100 days of content. And that's just if we're saying each episode's only an hour. And I would
Right.
say more, I think more of our episodes fall over than under, just by a titch.
I think so.
Yeah. I dig it. I dig it.
I like that. I like that it's the it could be the backbone, but we don't come in here every Saturday and talk about our kids.
No,
Imagine if we did, that might be boring for them. I
it
think
would.
this is more fruitful for them to get a flavor for our perspectives, our opinions around different things at different times. That's what I'm thinking.
Yep. I would agree with you.
That's cool. We can agree and we can disagree. That's the other thing that they would see from this too.
Mhm.
We've had some great conversations where both we're on different sides, yet we do it in a respectful way. There's so much, so much.
Um, Let me pivot. You ready to pivot?
I'm ready.
Being in the new school this last week, we were talking about code switching, and I've experienced the new codex for the new school.
Interesting.
Right? Yeah, because um I don't know, because maybe other people listening know, like I have worked at a lot of different schools. Like and when I say a lot, physically in those buildings, I think this is my fifth school. So and if you divide that out over you ratio that out over the course of my career, that's sort of switching schools every 4 years. And I don't know of anybody. I haven't met anybody that willingly seeks that. I haven't met anyone that has told me directly, yeah, like I like doing the same thing. When I explain to them my rationale why I do it, people are like, oh yeah, that kind of makes sense. Yeah, you learn more, you see more. It's that I only have 10 years left conversation that I put to you. Like I always feel like I don't have enough time to learn everything that I need to know about education. Like I'm always chasing the clock. So that's part of the other reason. And despite the fact that where I've currently landed, I have said to myself, this is probably where I'm going to retire. All that means is so now I have just over 10 years to make sure that that I'm looking at it like I don't want it to be a landing. I want it to be more like like those airplanes that can refuel in the air. That's what I want my retirement to be. You get the image though, right?
Yeah, I get the
Because I
image.
because I want to keep the momentum, right? I
Yeah.
want and I would just, you know, who knows? Maybe I'm Mission Impossible across that fuel line and I get into the other plane and I go in that plane instead. But I don't want to land in order to decide now where do I need to take off to next? Because that seems to me like that's not the kind of momentum that I want in my, when I decide to stop spending so much time teaching, in the public school system. So where's I going with this? So anyways, I land at the school. And right away I'm meeting people. And I've met like 5 people. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people I've met in my ending of the school year. I came in for a couple days and I went in a couple days last week, and I'm going to be going in all next week as much as possible too to get prepped up. 6, maybe 7 people, had conversations with everybody, and I'm starting to get the flavor of the new code book for this school. The way people, and you only have to be yourself to see other people's reactions, and they're like, oh, and they pause for a second, and I'm coming from a place, oh, this is just how I've always operated, and they're coming from a place where this is just where they've always operated. But either the topic or the tone or the shape of what we're talking about, we're kind of struggling to kind of come to a meeting point, because in the past those pieces and that conversation would have just fit nicely because that's how locally these things are talked about. And dude, I'm talking about simple things like just like where if I don't want this chair in my classroom, how do I get it out of my classroom? Do I just leave it in the hall? Do I have to walk it down to the caretaker's room? Do I have to take it out to the barn and store it myself? Can I put a label on it? Do I have to make a phone call? So that's, again, all those things are bound up in assumptions, expectations, and procedures. Every school, there's just enough common to make you feel smart, like you think you know what's going on, but there's always going to be a thing that trips you up because you actually don't know the local rules. So figuring out those local rules has been awesome. I love it. I love it because I kind of start from the point of view as local rules are fences. And I always like to know how close I can get to fences before I have to either climb the fence or just run along the fence line. How close can I get to those fences and still kind of get what I need done? And I am the type of person that just because someone who is the perceived individual that everybody goes to get a thing done, I'm always looking sideways to see who might be standing beside them or just off to the side, and they're going like this. And for those of us that are listening, I'm doing this sort of like there's often somebody that's kind of just slightly in the shadows, the shadow work, and you're like, oh, that's the person I need to talk to, but they're not going to tell me that. No one's going to say that because we're supposed to talk to this lead here, we're supposed to talk to that lead there. So I've been watching what doors open up by knowing what the codes are for different places, you know. So and so I'm in this. So in that, I know my next year is going to be all about code switching. Like I'm going to have to figure out what the new languages for this school. Obviously, there's going to be enough similar to previous things that I don't become a dysfunctional teacher. Like there's common language and tools and approaches and the digital stuff that we use. And I'm still in spec ed. So all of those are a continued conversation in the same work space. And I won't have to do a lot of work to create language. Like, let's say you had to stepping into the engagement role a couple of years back, like there was no language to speak specifically to the type of work that you wanted to do. So you have to create, well, here's how we go. Here's how this is going to be done. Make it organic, right? I'm on the other end where there's so much formalized language that I'm constantly kind of chipping away and saying, yeah, that was good 10 years ago. Yeah, that was good 5 years ago. But now we need to sort of take that and kind of modify it or take that and like chuck it in the garbage. Like that just doesn't work anymore. I think I said to you before, and I said in this podcast, part of me being hired is there's a certain expectation that they're looking for a refreshment in this program. So I guess that's good for me because I am that guy. Like I'm happy to kind of like I'm the pivot guy. I can come in and switch stuff up. I could do that. That's not a problem. Yeah, it's been I haven't I haven't had the how do I put it? Like I haven't had the like a ton of people there that I've had to contend with so far. So it's been kind of nice that I can kind of do these in small pieces. I'm imagining next week when I see a lot more people in and maybe even my department head is there at the same time or the assistant department head. Like I've been able to make demands of things, questions of things without too many questions being asked of me. So that's the next layer, right? When someone starts pushing back on the code on that I'm putting down. So we'll see how that kind of flexes next week because I know that there's going to be more people that are asking me things, and we'll see if I'm able to deliver because I arrived there as someone that has to build a program, right? So the questions that'll be asked of me. I think about this from the other perspective. I think about this quite a bit. So you remember Lonely Planet? You came and saw that play.
Mm-hmm.
Every once in a while, I try and run those lines. Like
Mm-hmm.
what? So I remember the story entirely, end to end. So listeners, anyone's checking this out, I was in a play springtime a year ago, I think it was. And it was just a 2-person play, right? So there was a lot of lines to learn, monologues to learn. And we got it done in a pretty tight timeline. So it's been over a year since I've been in that character, in that story. And every once in a while, I try and recall exactly some of the parts of it. And it is fading. Some of it is pretty solid. Some of it's still there. But just, I'm out by myself. I'm driving. Even when I'm out jogging, I'll try and recall some of the lines. And that's a little bit like what transferring to a new school is like, right? I get into the new school and there's something kind of fading. There's something familiar about being in the new school, but there's something kind of fading about, the previous script from the school that I was at. And when someone starts to ask me questions about, the community classroom that I'm doing right now, it's primarily an MID identification. That's kind of like the hub. That's the thing that gets them in. That's what starts the conversation with the kids. There's a lot more to their identities than that, but that's the starting point. I have a lot of experience in building community classrooms. I have very little experience in dealing and working and supporting directly individuals that have that identification. So that's a brand new space for me. So again, the codes, the way that I speak to it when I get in the school, I'll be learning a lot from other individuals, doing a lot of homework away from people so that I come back ready, depending on the experiences that are presented to me. But I'm also fascinated because the way people talk about this style of programming is not how I would talk about it. And I won't comment too much on that. But so far I haven't been, I disagree with how they're talking about the programming. So it's individuals that have experienced it both internally and just observing it. And I think that comes down to just my philosophy of helping humans who happen to be kids. I would not use the words that they would be using in order to talk about supportive programming like this. So I'll report more back on that. But I know that's where my codes won't change. Someone's going to have to take my codes and kind of run with them, because I won't give up that little bit of advocacy and a little bit about how I support kids, because somebody else's perception is overly emotional. So their experience in it is really, really clouding potential. They have a hard time seeing how it could change towards the positive and the supportive because of their experiences in it. So yeah, that's as close as I'll get to that for now. And it's not that I'm trying to spin rainbows out of it. I just think I look at I've come to believe, like, if I'm not evangelizing what it means to be a learning strategist, then that I'm doing something wrong in spec ed. And it's even to the point where I've never been a big fan of calling it special education. I really like saying we're learning strategists, as in we're going to spend time really digging into the tools of learning, brain structure, your emotional palette, and how those all sort of integrate, inhibit, and create learning for you. And I find often when I talk about that, I can talk about a community classroom, I can talk about a DD classroom, I can talk about a spec ed classroom, all these different kind of like the hierarchy almost within special education. You don't have, you flatten that hierarchy. You just talk about the learning strategies that are necessary for a kid to feel good about being in school, right? Um, and that's not the codes that I've currently experienced. So,
This business of I like that the learning strategist idea. I know here some schools have shifted from calling special education student success. You talk about what do we do? What are the conversations we have to have kids feel good or comfortable? I guess
mhm,
even saying those words, they're not correct. We don't need kids to be good and comfortable all the time because learning
no,
is not good and comfortable. But we what we do need is for them to be okay with waking up every day and going to this building or
mhm,
the space where learning happens, where they pick up skills and knowledge to assist them in their day-to-day living moving forward, right? So however you want to put it, I think we're missing the mark. I think there's a lot of times where, and I guess I'm biased, right? Because I'm in a space where my whole work is trying to find an in for a kid to come back,
mhm,
and we missed the mark. And there's a number of reasons why we missed the mark. But I'm also seeing spaces and people who look up from their busy day and schedule and say, "What do we need to do? I'm here. I'm open. Let's do this." And then you present that to the student, to the family, and then they push back. And it's pretty cool at this point as I'm starting my third year in re-engagement. I am more aware that everybody plays a role, including the family and the student. And if the school's open to it and the people there are open to it and the student is not, then it's like, okay, well, you know, we gotta navigate this. You don't want any part of this, and you say it's because of the things you experienced. I get it, but are you just gonna? You can't cleanly walk away. There's no clean walk away. Um, we're connected until a certain age, whether you like it or not. So people like me will be knocking on your door, calling you, texting you, because that's what I'm paid to do. I'm paid to get into your space and talk to you and collaborate. How do we make this work?
mhm.
Um, I guess I'm landing on what you said about our work to learn about our kids and provide them with what they need to grow. And it's a two-way street. We need the kids to want to do that, and we need the adults to be open to doing that as well, because sometimes the adults like, no, this is the way we do this, and it's like, whoa, this doesn't work for this kid. Well, that's okay, this is how I do this. Oh shoot, okay. And then you've got kids that say, yeah, I'm not going because I'm not interested in any of it. I'm like, well, hold on now. None of it appeals to you? Like, do you know about yourself? Do you know how you learn? Like, it is fascinating to me. It is fascinating to me. At the end of the day, it reminds me of, I guess, my nonchalant ways when you boil down to it. Boil it down, sorry. I remember when I was teaching grade 4 and 5. I had a student in grade 4. It was great. He came to school every day. He worked hard. Some things he was successful at, some things he wasn't successful at, like an everyday situation. Grade 5 starts, and in the first week of school, he took off out of the room, and he was
Mhm.
sitting outside and he wouldn't come back in. And I remember I called the office. I said, so and so just took off. What happened? Nothing. I was nothing that I could see. I was teaching the lesson, and he left. Okay. So then the principal finds him, starts talking to him, and he refuses to go into the school. So then the principal comes to my room and says he just refuses. He won't come back in. He doesn't want to go in. Can you go out and talk to him? I said, of course. So then I went out and I sat with him for a good 20, 25 minutes, came back in and said, he won't come in. And then he stopped coming to school for like the entire first term. Now, what's interesting to me is that he was the perfect student for re-engagement. These are the kids I now work with.
Yeah.
At the time, I didn't know. He just didn't come. And I remember being just open. I'm like, whatever you need from me, whatever you need, I'm here. If he reports to someone that he doesn't like this or can't stand this or whatever, I'll do whatever it is I need to do to demonstrate to him that I care. I want him back in the room because, and this is pre-COVID, right? So we're not talking like there's no, I think I always had a digital space, but like,
Yeah.
you know, it wasn't as now it would be post stuff to your D2L 24/7 and hope that he or she does some of the work. But back then it was like I could put together a package, somebody could drop it off at his house. It was basically like a precursor for what I currently do. But at the time, I was in the classroom. So I was busy with the 29 other kids in the room. So he wasn't there. I wasn't happy about it, but I also wasn't knocking on his door saying, come back, come back. That
Right.
wasn't in my toolbox, right? Fast forward to second term, his mom comes in, we have some meetings, and he starts coming back on a modified schedule. He comes in for an hour a day, second term. Report cards are going home, and I warn mom, this report card's like by report card standards, it's going to be bad. There are no marks. There are comments saying that he's not attended, therefore there is no mark. There's been no assessment and evaluation of anything. And she seemed to understand. Then when she got the report card, she lost her mind. And I remember saying, like, I went into my principal's office. I'm like, hold on here. Like, I talked to her several times about this. I told her, this is what, this is a report card. I don't control what that looks like and how it, like, none of that is me, right? It's like, that's the system talking to you. Me is bring him in whenever he can come in. We will do whatever we can do. And with that second report card, I will write what I can write because he's with me doing stuff and I can report. But the first one, he never came. So I can't make stuff up. There is, you know, and it was my principal's like, Roland, I totally get it. I understand. I'm like, okay, well, can you also deliver this message to mom? Because she's like ready to kill somebody. but I was not being adversarial. There was no pushback from me. There was no well this and well that. No, it was facts. I want him in the room. I care about him. The kids like him. Nobody here's pushing back, pushing him away. It's not happening. We're doing everything we can to be open arms. There's just something going on with him that we can't control. I don't know where he is now, but I found out that he had siblings that did the same thing. And then when I was in re-engagement, my first year of re-engagement, we got a referral for one of his sisters
Mhm.
who was in grade 12. And I remember it was all mental health. So the social worker grabbed it. And then every now and again, I check in. I say, "What's going on with this student's family?" And the social workers say there's no engagement. There's no, like, they don't want to talk to me. So I'm out. Like, we can't help this person. Um, what, what that did for me was huge because the classroom teachers I work with would tell me I don't understand how busy they are. I'm like, no, I friggin' understand. I've been you without knowing I was you. I had a student in my class who could have used a Roland, but there was no Roland around.
Hmm.
The kid was in grade 5. I don't work with grade 5s. I work with grade 7s and 8s. And that's not me being difficult. That's my mandate, right? So, because I tell you right now, if I was working with all grades, I would be overrun. I would be overrun. I would All effectiveness would be gone of if you want to consider any of what I do effective. All of it would be gone because I'd have kids coming out of the woodwork. Grade 2, grade 5, grade 8, grade 4. Um, yeah, man, you hit me with the learning strategist thing and with the what do we do to meet the kids where they're at with their skills and how do we build new skills? They are part of the equation, even though they want to. Some of them pretend that they're not. They are, and I'm starting to dig into that. I'm starting to see that some places are willing to give everything for the kid, but the kid's willing to give nothing back, and it's a shame because it's a two-way street. And then I see kids who are willing to give everything, and then I see schools that are willing to give nothing back. That hurts more, I think, because we get paid. That's our job. And we're like, yeah, we're not going to do that.
I like that. I like that you said that about the two-way street because I disagree. I don't think it's a two-way street. I don't believe that there's a such thing as reciprocity when it comes to working with a kid, working with a family. Um, I think that's where for me, duty lights me up and um I don't see it as two-way. I just see as it is a constant. It can be two parallel. You could it two streets, one street. It's all one effed up street. Confusing roundabout. But I don't I've stopped leaning on this idea that um that give and take is even useful. I Because I find the scale of that problematic. I think often my experience in sort of student success meetings or even intake meetings is that the better conversations is where I can leave it completely open. Like everything I do right now might elicit no forward momentum. Um, but it is my duty. I find if I start with duty and stay at duty for as long as possible, then it empowers me to sort of care and be compassionate for a family in a way that is more useful to me because duty helps me to understand where the spaces are between Chris the dad and Chris, the teacher, it helps me to understand role. It helps me to understand when I'm overstepping, and it helps me to sort of decode why I'm overstepping, and also to pull back because there are times where that code switching doesn't help. I've said from my perspective, sometimes I find myself in conversations where I feel like I'm at the kids' kitchen table. Like I'm literally sitting there when I'm working with the family. Sometimes that's really useful. It's useful if you've been brought into it as a respected contributor and that you can help someone to help themselves make change. It's not useful if you step in there and you step in and you realize that by sitting at the kitchen table, you become less of a positive influence. You're just like everyone else sitting there. And I think often you'll notice this from the reverse point of view when you're in student success conversations. I use that student success conversations very abstractly. It could be in school team meeting, it could be a one to one with the parent, but often I've noticed where the kids sitting there, I notice this in the parents too, but in conversations about helping a kid, I'm I'm incredibly tactical about watching how the kid reacts to the conversation and looking to see if their body language, or I mean, it could be the words they're saying, but even their body language is like this, they've been in this conversation 2,200 times before. And the fact of it is that the trajectory of the conversation is what is important. The destination you're trying to get to is important, but that conversation isn't. So then I think to myself, how do I have that conversation in a different way? And I think in doing that, my duty lights me up in a better way because I have a little bit more sort of fluidity and looseness. Because as a duty bound teacher, we have a lot of tools at our disposal, we have a lot of power at our disposal. I find sometimes um, expecting the reciprocity, though, becomes problematic for me because one of the things that happens often in education in these student success meetings is the one for one expectation that if we do something, you're going to do something. If we provide you with the courses, if we provide courses that you've said you want, then you'll show up for school. If we put you in the classroom with a certain teacher, that you're going to get better marks. And I'm always very cautious. And I get it. We need to build plans. I get it. We build plans. Teachers, education system, there's plans. We have to build plans. Planning is a part of what we do. Um, but if I don't lean on duty, then I find I'm more prone to taking offense to when a kid or family doesn't deliver on what the expectations are. Duty for me means that I'm going to be there. I'm going to be consistent. I'm going to be constant. I'm going to keep providing it as long as possible to the highest degree of resource enrichment with as little demonstrable fatigue on my end. I can keep doing this job. I'm going to keep doing this job. If you're not going to go with the flow, I understand that, but I'm going to be consistent here. Um, and for me, I found success in that way where sometimes it's three, fourth time going through this process with a family and a kid that finally it hits. I've gone through it similar number of times and it's never hit. I go back to the conversation I had with a colleague saying sometimes you're the signpost, sometimes you're the finish line. I think that where I lean on duty is that I can be the most consistent version of one of those, the most reliable version. But yeah, where we started, I don't agree with the two-way street.
This is
I get paid for my end of the two-way street. That's part of my duty. The money, like I'm deeper than that. I'm more of a human than that. But where I think like the baseline is that I'm here because I'm paid to do a job. And because of that, I will be creative from there. But ultimately, I keep doing that job, right? Whether the kid decides to sort of go with what I try and suggest or not. I don't need the kid to necessarily like me or even agree with me sometimes. Because there are times where they disagree and I'm like, no, this is still the plan. You could disagree if you want, but it's still the plan.
I don't disagree with you about duty, and nobody's saying that the teacher just gives up if the student's not there, doesn't want to do the work. This is a great actual example for our kids to watch one day on how you and I disagree.
Mhm.
I'm at the point where as you know, I don't stop doing my job. I continue to reach out, I continue to build plans, collaborate. But at some point, the student needs to want to do it, or else they're not. The results will remain the same if they choose not to engage.
And I'm
So
okay with that.
I know you are, but
Yeah,
my
and
job is to try to get them to engage. So you and I are in different space. You're the classroom teacher who's doing your thing, just like I was for that grade 5 student. I was going to school every day. I was doing my work. When he was there, I would work with him. When he wasn't there, I would send his mom an email. I was doing my job. My current job is to try is that focused intervention to try to find a way for the student to get in their car and drive down the street.
mhm.
So from my that is my duty. Um and I don't give up. Funny thing actually, and I think I may have told you this story. It's not even a story. It's an experience where um after I met with my principal at the end of the last year to provide her with a big picture overview of what I've seen and experienced. And there were some students on the list where, I said to her, there's been no movement. And she's like, tell me more. And I'm like, these several students are the ones that I literally have contacted every single day since they were on my caseload.
Mhm.
And they won't even answer a door or respond to a text. And then she said, okay, well, now is the time. Inform them that your duty has ended with them, and wish them well. And I'll never forget the one text I sent this one mom, and it was like, hey, it's Roland. Which is the same thing I said every day. Good morning, it's Roland, your son's re-engagement teacher. This will be my last text to you.
Mhm.
I wish you and your family an awesome summer. um, I wish him a great startup next year. Thank you for your time and energy. And I never forget, hit send and just like, oh, I literally had to take a step back and sit down and breathe, because I was basically saying, I'm out, I'm done,
Mhm.
which is so weird because the DNA is you're never done. The duty, as you spoke to very eloquently, it friggin' hurt. It was weird. It was weird. I'm like, I'm out. I've been directed. I've been directed. I'm out. I'm done. I'm not your re-engagement teacher anymore.
But in the where I kind of go, where I get where I invigorate that is that you still are the re-engagement teacher. So your purpose and your identity hasn't changed. But I really do lean on this individual has chosen to not engage with the engagement teacher. When they choose, and this is where duty kicks in, you're still there. One of the things, and I'll
Well,
just go one
technically,
of
I'm not. With this one student, it's not me anymore. Like, if they
right.
reach out to me, then
Yeah.
I'll be like, awesome. Let me navigate this with you so I can connect you with the people now who are charged with supporting you. It won't be me, but I will walk you there, but then I step away again.
And I get the personal dent you would take by, let's say, by not being able to be that next person, right? But I think this is the example of where I also look at duty connected. Duty for me is connected to the broader system. So when I think about me doing similar work as you, of course, we were on a Marco Polo when one of my former students, that I'll say, like, that was not a that was I helped that student quite a bit to kind of get through school. And when I left, there was no assurance that that success was going to be, successful. But while there, I delivered everything that I had. I delivered. Um, and you know, you heard in the polo, I'm like, yeah, you know where to find me if you want to come drop by and visit. Still give them the protocol. Make sure you check in at the office first. Give them the room number, and you're welcome to come and check in, and we can have a further conversation about this. So that's where duty is reignited. I still feel that duty drive to still help this human move forward. It's been on pause for the last 7 years. But I'm also the individual that understands that the box that my duty sits in. And it has to be like that. It has to be like that, I find, for my mental wellness, that the duty means in the pursuit of direct service, or in the pursuit of direct support, the duty is activated. And that would even be if I'm doing the research or I'm doing the work away from that moment or that kid. But I also recognize when I am no longer in that mode of direct service. And I can at that point fold up the actual case and say, okay, I put that on the shelf. My duty is done. Um, I'm okay also with handing individuals off too. Here's the next person that needs to take. I was the sign. I was a finish line, but it was only one. It was just a split on your actual run. You're now have to get involved with Chidiac because Chidiac is the next person.
It's funny that you say that, because this is funny because I had a similar situation. A student was I was their re-engagement teacher. They left the school board, and then the mom would continue here and there to contact me and say, "How would this work if we came back?"
Mhm.
And I didn't respond and say, "Whoa, you're not mine anymore." The duty, as you say, kicked in. It's like, this is what would happen if you came back.
Yep.
This is where I would refer you, and this is who you talk to, and always end the conversation with, "But no guarantees." Like, I can't guarantee you anything, right?
Mhm.
Well, they finally came back, and the mom's like, "Okay, we're back. What happens now?" And I remember saying, "This is what I'm going to do." And then I did it, and I communicated with the people that now they're charged with the action component of the duty. And they're like, "Why are you sending this to us?" Like, they wanted nothing to do with it. I'm like, these people are back. They want to re-enter into their specialized programming. You guys are in charge of that.
Mhm.
Well, like, it was almost like, why are you giving this to us? I'm like, because it's your job to do this. And it was almost like, well, why are you involved? Because the mom has a connection with me. I worked with her kid, and she doesn't know who else to talk to. Why didn't you just call the school? Well, she's going to do that. I'm letting you know she's going to call the school. So when she calls the school, you don't give her the runaround for a week. Like,
Mhm.
it was hilarious. They were almost like, "Can you step away?" And I'm like, "I would love to, after I actually do my job, which is to inform you that this person has returned. They're going to be calling you. You guys want surprises?" Like, it was just an interesting conversation. They were like, "Stay in your lane." I'm like, "I am in my lane. I'm simply informing you of that this is happening. Are we not supposed to?" It was hilarious. It was like teacher 101 stuff, and try not to have surprises land in principals' laps and stuff. And it's like, I was doing everything I could to make this as transparent as possible. But they were like, "We prefer to keep it transparent, and you just stay out of it and let them wait an extra week." And it was almost like they were like, "No, no, let's let the red tape happen. That's why it's here."
Mhm.
And I was like, "Huh?" Like, totally confused. Like, my whole world is red tape, and I thought it was my job to cut through it a little bit. Um, and you just reminded me of, it was just funny. They were like, "No, no, Roland, our broken system is in place for a purpose. Let it be broken." I was like, it was just one of those moments where I was like, Thank you for your suggestion. I think I'll just continue to create these emails so that when someone says, "Why didn't you?" I'll say, "No, I did.
Mhm.
Here's what I did. What happened after what I did is up to somebody else." Which is hilarious, because I've also noticed I'm an easy target. I'm a very easy target. I'm a one person show. I have a principal, right? But I'm a one person show. I'm an easy target. Well, why didn't Roland, or wasn't Roland supposed to? It's like, I did. I referred it on. Of course, I have proof because you're going to ask for it next. Because
Yeah.
God forbid I just use my words and then I can't prove that I did what I say I did. Anyway, bro, great conversation about duty, about and I actually have no expectations of anybody. It's a sticker in my car, no expectations. I control what I can control, and that's it. But I don't, I answer to other people. If Here's another good one. There's a student who wants to visit the school next week to kind of get a flavor for being back in the building. So I did everything in my control to connect with the school and say, can we make this happen? I don't expect any of you to supervise him. I will be there. I
Mhm.
just need to get in the building and I'll supervise. I'll make sure he's safe and secure and whatever. And then we get a message from the kid's parents saying, "Oh, we're on vacation that week." Okay, well, I guess then you're not getting a tour because
Mhm.
it's it's not going to magically happen before a certain day. Um, and I told you that this is when it would happen. This is the window, and you're not here. So it's one of those things where everybody looks around like, "What do you mean it's not going to happen?" Well, you're not here. How would you like it to occur if you're not here? it, so then there's people who expect stuff that make completely no sense. Like, you're not physically here. I guess, do you want me to walk around with my phone? We could do like a FaceTime and I can show you the building again. If
Yep.
that's what you want, I guess I can do that too, right?
Yes.
Um,
Be careful with that one.
well, I'm not suggesting that, but if they were to say, "Can you just walk into his classroom and show us what it looks like?" As
Yes,
long
I
as
can.
if that's okay with the principal and they permit me to be in the building and do that, then I will do that. But it's not my school. I'm not the
Right.
principal, right? I don't have access to the building unless I'm provided with access to the building.
That's true.
So do what I can. I control what I can. I try to have no expectations, even though we set some up collaboratively as best as we can. But if I show up somewhere and somebody doesn't answer a door, I'm not in my car crying. I'm like, okay, well, they're not
No,
answering the door. It's time to go to the next place.
there's something really I like. There's something about this conversation that makes me really think about what's the word? It's something I'm gonna have to Google it while we're chatting. But um rational detachment, is that it? Positive detachment? I think there's a condition. There's a condition that has only been made worse through social media and digital things where this idea that there's something very harmonious about this idea of being connected with communities and connected with people and feeling like you have strong bonds even when the individual isn't in front of you. I think there's a not a dangerous, but there's a there's an effect that needs to be managed within that, and it's where you make sure that you have a clear and I would say dispassionate toolkit of detachment where you can reasonably and authentically stop providing service without being grounded or stopped by guilt. And there's something I'm trying to think of if there's any colleagues that I work with that do that well that can that clearly let you know that when they're with you and working with you that you're on that your team is cohesive, that you're collaborating, you're synthesizing, you're doing those things, but you don't get to expect that that is a constant if you're not directly connected. So what that means is no, like you're not going to be texting each other after 5 p.m. about work stuff. No, they're not gonna be just constantly dropping in and asking more and more questions. And on one hand, even as I say this, I'm like, I really enjoy that part. I do enjoy that part, that idea that I can get access when I'm craving it. But there's something really useful, I think, as well in education about this idea of rational detachment, that at some point you say, "No, the day is done. We're not moving forward with this anymore today." Short of an extreme emergency that would involve, danger, death, harm, incoming or oncoming. No, we don't just reach out to check in again constantly. We set our next meeting and we come back to that meeting with intention to get something done. If something new arises along the path, we have a method for introducing that, but it's not constant like text, 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 call, 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 call. We're not in motion unless we're constantly in front of each other. And I don't have a great I think I'm gonna be examining that this year. A small example of that is that you and I sometimes we text ahead of time, "Are we plotting tomorrow?" Other times we just wake up on Saturday and we go with for it. And I will say it's a great exercise in kind of it's a great stoic exercise, but I think on a personal emotional, just emotional fabric kind of exercise. If I were not to get a mess, there would have been a point, definitely a point that there, how do I say this? I don't know exactly what it is because I haven't unpacked it completely that makes me entirely comfortable with not hearing specifically from you a directive that we are going to pod on Saturdays. But I've grown into that and I've actually become okay with that. That, like, okay, the rule is maybe it's just figuring out the rule. The rule is you wake up and you go about your day until that text comes in and says, okay, I'm grabbing a coffee, which tends to come within this time period, right? Within this 15-minute period, there's going to be a note saying, okay, grabbing a coffee, hitting the bathroom. This is going to be, um, this is going to be happening. I think there's a lesson to be learned in that, but I'm not quite sure what it is yet. But applying that to business and applying that to education, I know of I know of individuals that are just constantly flooding each other with unnecessary emails, which for the most part are just they're check-ins that really don't hold the individuals accountable for their own responsibilities. As in, here, can you proof this? Can you proof this? Is it on the right track? Can you proof this? Am I on the right track? Like that kind of stuff, as opposed to develop the thing, do your homework, arrive at the meeting with something that you can present that more brains can kind of chomp on, and then you take that and you develop it to the next level. There is something I think that's why I kind of go lone wolf and I'm just like, I'm gonna go rogue and just kind of get this thing done. I'm not gonna volunteer to lead a thing because other individuals can't get it done. Like I won't necessarily do that, but I will just drive and get my part done and have it ready for whenever that next meeting is. I'm getting too abstract, which means I have to do some thinking away from this conversation. But the rational detachment, I think, is a useful tool, not only to engage with your colleagues, but also to show students how to do it. And that they can, because I think part of mistake making and growth comes from you feeling like you just have to develop in a bit of a bubble and then you come up for air and you share it. But it doesn't have to be constantly in the face of somebody else that you think they have to give you approval when they don't. They're just kind of like placating you, so to speak. It's a kind of a weird thing, but I'm gonna be examining that moving forward. Um, I think part of an examination of that for me professionally will also help me align the individuals that actually can be mentors for me, because I definitely don't want or need to check in with 100 people in developing of things that I need. But I do want to know the individuals that I think have a deeper sense, a deeper skill, a deeper uh, philosophy than I do, and I can learn from that. I can apprentice out of it, right? I don't know. What do you catch off that?
the main thing that I stuck with while you were two main things. The one main thing is that I've learned from you to operate in a way where unless something crazy's happening in my world on a Saturday morning, I don't text you asking you if we're going to pod. The default is we're podding unless we hear otherwise. That's from you. Because before that, I was the type that would message you on Friday night and say, "Are we doing this tomorrow?" I don't do that anymore. And I get that from you. Um, I know there are times where I say to you, "Hey, shoot, Saturday morning might not work." And then we never get back to it. And then Friday night, we're communicating because I had said something to you and you're like, "Shoot, dude, you told me you might not be like, I'm just, or you might need to be out at a certain time." So every now and again, there's the night before what's going on tomorrow. But generally speaking, like even last night, I laughed to myself and I was like, I guess we're podcasting because I didn't hear from Chris. He didn't tell me anything he's doing on Saturday that's out of the ordinary. Oh, I guess I'll just hit the sack and I'll wake up and message him I'm grabbing my drinks and I'll be sending you a link soon. That's the first thing. I've kind of picked that up from you. And I only do it with you. I don't do that with everybody. So I try to follow I have different relationships with different people. So I try to operate. We have an operating system for everybody. I don't just operate one way with everybody, although my family might say I do. So that's an interesting one for me to dig into. But then this business about like expectation and like doing your thing and people wanting this and that. I'm the same as you. I'm in a space now where if I was waiting on everybody else to do certain things before I operated, I'd never get any work done. So I've really, well, and I did this in the classroom too. I take control of the pieces that I can actually do something with, and I do it. And I do it and I wait. And then I do like a professional check in and I say, "Hey, I'm still here. It's been 4 days." So I think I've given you enough time to mess around with what I was talking to you about,
Mhm.
but I'm not going to wait 3 weeks to hit you up again because that would be unprofessional. So I'm just checking in, and then I get "Oh shoot, I totally forgot," or "I've been working on it. I still need a little bit more time." Okay, like because I I guess for me, I like to know that I'm doing the best that I can. And s- so I've learned to back off. I've learned to just take it easy with other people are doing their thing and I can't control other people. I can only
Right.
control me. So I'm going to do me. But somebody might say to me, because people have done this before, where they say, it's the duty thing. Like, why haven't you called this kid in a week? Well, because the last 10 weeks I've done it and they've not responded. So I just kind of put them aside. Then I'm going to get a side eye when I say that. I'm going to be like, "You did what? Like, what do you mean you put them aside?" I'm going to get a side eye because that person can give me the side eye. And then it's like, okay, well, let's have a conversation. So I don't operate that way. I,
Mhm.
I operate in a way that you can give me as much side eye as you want. I guess I have to be okay with my performance. I have to be okay. If I'm not okay with it, then we got major problems because I'm the one doing it.
Yeah.
I try not to land anymore on, man, I can't control. And some of the chaos happening around some of these people, like, when I need something from a principal, I, here's a good example. I, I don't make promises to kids and families that I can't keep. So usually what it looks like is I check in with the powers that be to say, "Hey, this is what I'm thinking. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Do we need to twist this? Who do I need to talk to?" I set things up and I have
Yeah.
permissions in place, and then I go back to the family and I'm like, "Hey, here's the plan. Do you like it? Do you not like it? Well, can I do this? Yes, you can. Can I do that? No, you can't." Because I kind of have an idea of my playing field, right? There have been times where I've said to students, I've reached out and I've not heard back, so this is what we're going to do, and I take action and I take ownership. And then I go in, and if somebody were to say to me, "Why'd you do that?" Like, well, I contacted you 3 times over the last week and a half to try to get your position. You didn't give me one. I'm not gonna, if the kid's ready to come into the building, I'm not gonna say no, you can't because I don't have answers to these questions. I'm going in, and this is what I'm gonna do. So I made an executive decision. So if you didn't like that executive decision, this is perfect because we're having this conversation now, and I'm gonna know exactly where your perimeter is. When I get like that, I'm kind of righteous. I'm like, whoa, I gave you lots of time to give me answers. And I know you're doing your world. I didn't get any answers, but this kid's ready. So I needed to do something. I need to keep
Yeah.
this kid moving. You want to give me shit? I'm okay. I'm sitting in the chair. I'm ready to take it because I made a choice and I'm living by my choice. But for the most part, I'm not the wheeling and dealing. I'm not making decisions left, right, and center and ignoring everybody around me. I do my best to let the people who are in charge weigh in, give me perimeter. You know, some of them are like, do whatever works, just get them in here. Awesome. So then when somebody says, what are you doing that for? The principal said I could. Okay. You know, the worst thing is when they're like, why are you doing that? And I'm like, because I felt like it. Does the principal know? I don't know. Whoa, that's like breaking duty territory. I'm not doing my job. But I don't just, I used to sit on my hands. I don't sit on my hands anymore. I take action, and I
Yeah.
think I take reasonable action. And if somebody thinks it's unreasonable, they'll tell me, and then I'll know. And then we can have that great, I've been practicing this honest conversations thing, right? This professional conversations. Then I'm more than happy to sit and have this courageous conversation with you and say, I keep asking you for stuff and you keep not responding to me. So please tell me, how would you like me to do this moving forward?
Yeah.
And then we get an answer, we get pushback, whatever. I'm game for those conversations now because it's like, well, I've tried a couple different things and you're not responding to anything. So what is it? How do you operate? Share it with me, please, so I can operate in your world. I find we
Yeah.
don't go there because nobody wants to have those conversations.
Yeah, I kinda like those ones. I like those ones. I like finding a I like trying to find a way into them because I do find them valuable. I do find them valuable. Because I think that, where it kind of happens for me is that you find your way into that conversation, and then you really do find out that you can kind of parse it out, and everyone can kind of take a piece of it, right? So it's sometimes that accountability. You think that the person you're asking might be the one to do the thing or share the thing or know the thing. Sometimes they're just a pass through, and they actually aren't, and you actually are, or they kind of say, I know this other person. Why don't you check in with them? And all of that kind of disappears unless you can find yourself into that moment, like just that opportunity. And I definitely do not like to waste time in those moments. So I find if I do, when I notice it, I will ask that question that often people are like, what the hell are you at? Like, you're kind of going kind of Mr. Robot on this. I'm like, I am. I said, because I recognize that between you and I, we're not the ones to do it. But we're not the ones to deliver or action it, but I need to get this information to somebody else then. So I do appreciate everything you've done, but thank you. What's this person's name? Please just give me that person's name and I'll take it from there. And I like being expeditious that way. I also feel like it does actually honor what's going on in the moment. Like it does make what's going on in the moment really clear, I find. So
It's funny, when I was debriefing with my principal and I was explaining like the culture and the process of particular places, the
yeah.
look on her face was one of surprise. And I was like, what's going on? She's like, well, why isn't this person involved in this situation? I'm like, I don't know. That's not that's not how it's played out. And it's funny watching her looking at this from 10,000 feet and saying, how can this person not be part of the process of working with this student? I'm like, they're just not. Why? Well, because that's not the way that the principal's directed it. I've been told that these are my contact people with the school, and when this goes bad, this is what we do. And it was pretty cool for my to see my principal say, okay, well, when I present your role again to the administrators at the start of the school year. I'm going to lean on this and I'm going to lean on this because, from her perspective, she's like, there are certain people in the building, it's non negotiable. They should be part of this. And the school shouldn't be leaning on you to put out these fires that are clearly school fires. Like it's the school fire department that's supposed to be taking over when you've got the kid in the building. It's
Yeah.
not call Roland to come to the building and put out the fire because when I can, I do. But there have been times where I respond to principals and I'm like, I'm hip deep in a situation across town. You're not going to see me today because I've got a
Mhm.
situation right in front of me. Right. So it's like, but then there's other times where it's like, you know what? I can flex 45 minutes at this time. Will that work for you? Or I can come right now because what's happening is under control in front of me. It's just kind of a maintenance thing I'm doing.
Mhm.
They're good. I'm rocking. I'm out of here. So it's interesting though that as we get through more of the work I'm doing, my principal's starting to see patterns and she's starting to see inconsistencies and she's trying to optimize as best as she can, which is great because it's her voice that goes to the administrator's table and the superintendent says, hey, listen, like Roland's been doing this for 2 years now. We see patterns, we see things. This is schools, I need you to consider these things when Roland's involved, which is a place I'm not, that's not my role. If I have a good reputation, not reputation, if I have a good rapport with the principal, then I can say, hey, how do you want to play this? Like, this is what I need from you. What do you need from me? And we
Yeah.
go. But there are some admin that don't operate that way, which is fine. I just talk to my principal and I explain, and then she communicates with that administrator about the expectations placed on my role, what's reasonable, what's realistic, because now we have more of that. um, hey, we have a viewer, Crypto Steve, also known as Adam Sandler. He looks just like Adam Sandler.
Nice.
He's here to visit. Steve, welcome. Steve hosts a really great space on Twitter called the Wild Cards, and it is organized chaos, is what they call it. It's good times.
I
Thanks,
gotta
Steve, for
share.
checking us out.
I gotta share with you. Thanks, Steve. I mean, hopefully, Steve's still listening because this. I don't know. Maybe this will be kind of fascinating.
Oh,
So,
hold on. Can I say one
right.
more thing?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Do it.
Steve's a teacher.
Okay.
Uh, Steve's a special education teacher, so I just wanted to put that
Hey,
out there.
me too,
Yeah.
Steve. Me too. Um. So, last night over dinner, how did this come up? Oh, okay. So, a friend of ours, their kid is going to Fan Expo. So, Fan Expo's this weekend in Toronto. And so we were talking a little bit about that, and they were talking about how someone at dinner is like, so how does that work? Like, is it just you just dress up in cosplay and you go? And I'm like, well, no, there's more to it than that. There could be speakers, there's photo opportunities, there's usually a marketplace. And we're talking about just, the different, I said sometimes DC, Marvel, there's different science fiction stuff. Some rooms you might be able to get into just general admission, and then others you got to pay extra. So we were just kind of like playing with what a Comic Con or a Fan Expo could be. And then I mentioned NFTs came up, and there was some real curiosity about like, what does that mean? I'm like, well, I said, because we started to talk about comics and digital art and video games and how you know, my son is always talking about the thing that he wants to get on Fortnite. And I'm like, yeah, I said, it's unfortunate the amount that you've actually bought there that has absolutely zero value. So that led us into a conversation around the whole, you know, creating NFTs, having the digital wallet and the connection. So the connection between digital wallet, NFTs, art collection, art collection, digital art, NFTs, having a wallet, and cryptocurrency. So that's a package, right? That kind of all comes together. And I've spent some time looking into it, and you've shared with me, your experiences as well. But it was fascinating last night to have the conversation around, at our dinner table, there was a very clear need that if you are an art collector and you appreciate art, you want something physical to hang in your house. You want to adorn, right? And that's just a position, and that's fine. Like that can be the way you look at it. And there's a lot more to the discussion than that, obviously. But what came up as an addendum to this was the how NFTs also include perks. That it could be you could get access to a concert, you could go into a restaurant and you get 20% off food. Like the back end of how the NFTs are actually coded and networked, sometimes it's obvious, sometimes it happens after the fact, is in it allows you entrance or membership into spaces. I shared your experience with how you would have gotten access to that streaming event had you had that. And by the way, you could still get in if you pay for it right up front, and then you did the conversions. You're like, whoa, that's I'm not about to buy into this. And then I showed them, I forget what it's called, something C, deep sea, sea something. It's like a
Open
mark,
sea.
open sea, the marketplace, right? And I started showing them a lot. I started showing them, I kind of showed the family. I said, okay, so right now, one Ethereum coin, how much is that in Canadian dollars to convert it? I said, one Bitcoin, what is that in Canadian dollars converted to? And I could just see their minds kind of go, what is going on here? And they're like, okay, well, wait a second. So I had to show them that often, like OpenSea, like you'll see a piece of art and it's like a percentage of an Ethereum. So it's like 0.001 or whatever. And then you do the conversion, you're like, okay, so that digital piece of art is $500 Canadian. I could just see their heads go like, why would you pay $500 for like just that digital thing? I'm like, okay, so now we have to talk about blockchain. Now we have to talk about how it's encoded, as in, and if someone just, because they're like, well, just take a screen capture of it. I'm like, you can, and you can actually, if you want, you could, I guess, put that back on the blockchain if you could find a way. But there's coding in there that shows that it's not the original. It's not the first one. It's not the actual original piece. Just like if you decided to buy a Picasso and put it in your house. I said the difference being, though, that Picasso put in your house, it's a lot harder to establish whether or not that's the original. It is really difficult. So you could spend millions on a fake. I said it's nearly impossible to do that with NFT stuff. It really is. And I could see their heads start to kind of go. And I said, this is just like, and I said, the fact that you're even thinking about one Ethereum relative to a Canadian dollar means you're just in your beginning of understanding of the application of this, because the actual bigger picture is to not ever have it come back into necessarily standardized currencies. Like if you could stay in crypto and find communities that deliver crypto. So Karen's like, yeah, but like you can't get your groceries anywhere in crypto. I'm like, no, you can. There's places you can actually. I said it's not like here where there's 100 metros in our town, and they're like, yeah, but you can't do tap with it. I'm like, well, no, but there are cash machines that'll do it for you. Like you can actually go up and say you can convert your crypto into whatever money you want it to. I said it's probably not all cryptos because some of them are pretty obscure. I said, but those are also representative of communities that believe in it. And they'll trade within that community, just that one specific crypto. And then Jake's like, yeah, I heard of crypto Dogecoin. So we looked it up. And like Dogecoin is like right now 35 cents on the Canadian dollar or something like that. It's low. I forget what it is, but it's less, way less than a dollar. So if you had a million Dogecoin, you got like a couple $100 in your pocket. And I could just, it was fast. How do we get on this? I guess that, what was that dude's
Van
name that
Expo.
just,
Crypto
what's that?
Steve.
Crypto
Crypto
Steve. It
Steve
got
and
me. It
Van
got me
Expo.
thinking of that. And I don't know if Crypto Steve is actually into crypto, but I'll assume he is. That's part of what he's kind of interested in. Um, but yeah, it was funny. This was a good exercise too because I was able to answer the questions. So the research I've done to kind of understand it, because I told him, I said I was looking at taking some of my watercolors and converting those into digital NFTs. I said, but I haven't sort of like jumped on that because of the other steps of then going the wallet and then sort of like formally launching it on blockchain and then having to manage that. So I said, but there's smiles around the table. I'm like, yeah, and I would be like 0.00000005 ETH out of that. Like these aren't coming in as one ETH coin.
So it's funny that we're talking about this and Stevie's here because so he is big time into it and he's entering into he's a big believer. of cross chain collaborations and communication. So Steve is like, this is funny that we're talking about this because you'd never hear this on Twitter or X or whatever. But to me, Steve is like an ambassador, and he
Mm.
is a goodwill ambassador. Like, he always seems to come at it from a positive way, even on his shows. He does a mindfulness and mental health show on Wednesdays with another guy named Cosmic, whose real name is Sean, and then he's got Wild Cards on
Cosmic
Friday.
was here last week, I think.
Yeah, Cosmic
Yeah,
was here
Cosmic
last
chimed
year.
in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cosmic jumped in.
So yeah, Cosmic, also known as Sean, they do a thing on Wednesday where they focus on mental health and mindfulness, and then Fridays the wild cards, which is just, it brings out the 16-year-old Roland, which is it's a lot of fun. I've built myself like a character, and Stevie lets me play with that, so he's not like, "Yay, you can't do that or say that." So it's fun. But in the middle of all that fun, there's a lot of talk about like the market and the different chains and the different projects. Um, and Steve's, to me, he is like hip deep, but he's very good at being open about helping people out with it. Having said all that, I learned that when your NFT or CNFT with the Cardano blockchain, you it's called utility when you can use it for different things. So
Mhm.
this is really cool. Last night in the wildcard show, um, I focused on the NFT group that do the Saturday. It's called Saturday Night Utility. So every Saturday night, their marketing guy or whatever, I don't know what his title is, he opens up this space, and they're very kind. Like, I visited it several times now. It just so happens I visited on fight nights, which is cool because I can watch the fight on my television, but I mute it and I listen to them talk about the fight in the
Mm.
space. And like I said, I discovered that if I wanted to be part of the feed in their Discord, I would need to have an NFT so I could use that utility, but I don't. And I was like, "Oh." So last night in Wildcards, this NFT family came up, and then I discovered that their stuff is relatively inexpensive right now, and using not Ethereum but ADA as the cryptocurrency. And ADA is actually pretty friendly, like in terms. So I could get one of those NFTs for 23 US, so maybe 27 Canadian, and then have the utility to friggin' go in and out of that Discord space, and I'm a member. I can do whatever I want. Well, not whatever I want. I can do whatever I want that is open to their membership. And I actually was like, okay, this is reasonable. It's like buying a pass for somewhere. 27 Canadians, very doable for me, right? Whereas I discovered another NFT space. They are like, hey, we'll give you this for free, but if you want it on the blockchain, you have to pay. And I was like,
Mhm.
okay, so what is it going to cost me on the blockchain? And they're like, this much Ethereum. I looked it up. It's like 270 bucks Canadian. I'm like, yeah, I'm out. I'm not, I'm sorry. I'm not paying 270 bucks Canadian to get those utilities that I don't think are worth that. Whereas there are so many other I call them NFT families. Maybe they're called projects, whatever you want to call them. There's, if I'm not there yet. I'm still in the beginning phases. I'm watching and listening to people like Steve and some of these other guys that are open to, they talk about it.
Mhm.
They always say, we're not giving it, this is not financial advice. Do your own homework. Steve says that every time he starts wild cards, but they just talk about it and stuff. And I've got some NFTs. They were gifted to me, and it's cool to be part of those little families because they truly view you that way. They're like, "Holy cow, you're one of us now because you have this." And I'm like, "Whoa, this is kind of cool." Like, it's nice to get to know people in different spaces. Um, but like, yeah, that the fight night utility, I seem to be digging that. So I could spend 27 bucks, get myself one of their NFTs. That's the floor price, by the way. Like if I could spend up to I don't know how many hundreds for the different ones that are rare or whatever the case is, right? Because it's a whole layers among layers. But it popped up last night. I looked it up on not OpenSea, the JPEG store, I think it's called. I was like, holy shit, 27 bucks. And I could be part of this family. It's interesting. But there are also, and the other thing too is I've noticed the psychological component. Like this one NFT project, I'd be happy to spend that 27 bucks because every time I connect with one of these people or jump into their spaces, they're always very open and welcoming. Like they're not like, "What are you doing here? You need to leave." They're like, "What's going on, man?" And I'm like, I like that I'm being treated like a human first. I don't know who's going to make what off my 27 bucks, but they're cool graphics too. Um so if I'm going to buy into it, I want to buy into people who treat me like a human, cool stories and ideas of the project. That's cool. I like that. If you're gonna play with it, I like that there's stuff that actually interests me. So that's so cool, though. Yeah, we were talking about Fan Expo here yesterday too, and my wife was mesmerized with this idea that yeah, you pay 50 bucks to get in, but if you want to meet so and so, you might have to drop another 100 bucks. And she's like, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, "Though they're not signing autographs and taking pictures with you for free." She's like, "Well, didn't you pay to get in?" I'm like, "Yeah, you paid to get in, but if you want that autograph or if you want that picture, you drop 100 bucks and you wait in line. When you get to the front of the line, they'll treat you like gold, but you paid for it." She was like, "What?" I'm like, "Yeah, that's how it works." She's like, "How do you know that?" I'm like, "Because years ago, when I had teacher friends who would go to hockey card card conventions, hockey card,
Mhm.
baseball cards, and yeah, your favorite hockey player might be there and you did get into the place, but if you want him to sign 2 or 3 of your cards, you're paying 150 bucks to wait in
Yeah.
line, to get up to the front. He'll sign and then they're like, "We'll sign 1 big item and 2 small items, nothing more, nothing less." So there's
Yep.
rules around this, and she was fascinated. But
Yep.
imagine you had an NFT and you're like, "No, first and foremost, you wanna get in that line. It's gonna cost you 100 bucks cash, but you also need to prove that you belong to our community and that this utility is open to you. And this is how you."
This is how I described it actually to the family at some point. I said it's no different than like a really basic way to think about it are buying comics or collector cards. Like that's something that is very accessible to people. And the hope is that, they get the first run of it, the number one of the series or the number one overall. There is only one. And the hope is that it increases in value. I said, but the only way it increases in value is value increases as scarcity drops. I said that's a ratio that you always have to pay attention to, right? It's when it comes to the actual art item. So the fewer there are, this philosophy can change, but typically, if you're an artist of any measure that's become a hot artist, it's because people have difficulty accessing your stuff. I think the whole blockchaining increases the likelihood that we can understand scarcity because you can't replicate and you can't copy paste. You can, but it doesn't, but it's not the original, right? Like you can actually see the original version of it. This has got me thinking about if this idea of NFTs had existed when teachers paying teachers had popped up. This idea that whoever created the original copy of a thing, and you can go on Google and you can within 100 characters find a template for a 3-part lesson plan, right? But at some point that was kind of groundbreaking. Imagine if someone had sort of had access to squeezing the market in a way that that first version of a 3-part lesson plan, like the original one that was created digitally, or the photo representation of the one that was created just before Google Drive hit the market, someone actually owned that and someone said, yeah, man, that's worth you know 0.25 of a Bitcoin, because like that is like teacher souvenir memorabilia. That's gold. So
It's very interesting. I know. Oh, that's awesome. The eventual death of YouTube.
we don't know.
No, we don't know.
2005, Valentine's Day, 2005, it launched.
That's crazy.
Mhm.
Um, Shoot, where was I? Was heading somewhere before I saw that grim picture you created.
I grimmed it up, eh?
Oh, Gary Vaynerchuk. So he has a line of NFTs, V Friends, they're called.
Mhm.
And I remember when it first started, I had no idea that it was connected to NFTs. It's Anyway, he has got this thing that happens every year called VCon.
Yeah.
And I found out if you want to go to VCon, you have to have a V Friends NFT. So
On
I'm gonna
top of paying the ticket price.
Yes, on top of
Yeah.
anything you have to pay, you
Yeah.
have to be a V. That's my understanding when I looked
It's the
into it.
secret handshake, bro.
Yeah,
It's the secret handshake.
he is taken off with that stuff. He's got a whole arm of who he is into that, and he has trading cards. So I see on X people talk about, hey, who wants to play tonight? They have the V cards and they play this game. I don't even know how it works, but there's a card game because anybody who's followed him for a while knows that he was a card collector as a kid and he has fond memories of baseball cards and all that stuff. So he's just turned it into an adult thing now, which is
Mhm.
brilliant, right? But anyway, yeah, I wanted to share that with you because I know we've talked to Gary Vaynerchuk for years.
Mhm.
He's in this space hardcore, hardcore. Anyway, thanks for the convo today,
Yeah, good stuff, man.
and so I wish you a great weekend. We're shutting it down, eh?
Mhm.
This was season 6, episode 46, number 264. Have a good one, Chris.
You too, man. And Crypto Steve,
Crypto
you
Steve. I think he was long gone like
that's
10
okay.
minutes ago, but it's nice of him to check it out.
Absolutely.